from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Then, with great joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel together sang to you this song.
Mi chamocha b'elim Adonai, mi chamocha neda b'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef ele. Shira chadasha shibhu gaulim, לשמחה סבת חיים. יחד כולם הודו וכמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ידעי דעי ידעי דעי דעי צור ישראל ומה בעזרת ישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. We come to our Amidah on 140. Feel free to stand if you've got space to do so and you'd like to. On 140. Yananai nai 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 Adonai. Yananai nai 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 Sefatai Tiftak. Yananai nai 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 Ufi Yagit. Ufi Yagit Achilatecha. Yananai Adonai. Yananana Sefatai Tiftak. Yananana Ufi Yagit Achilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, Ha'el Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei HaKol, v'Zocher Chazdei Avot v'Imachot, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומשיח ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומרעיד הגשם. מזריח השמש ומרעיד הטל. מחלחל חיים וחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים. סומק נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיע ישועה, ונאמן אתה לך חיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. לקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. כבודו מלא עולם, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. במקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך כלנו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדובדו, הללויה, לדובדו. Anyone can jump in?
L'dor vador,
L'dor
l'dor vador,
vador, nagid God lecha. L'dor vador,
l'dor vador,
l'dor vador,
l'dor vador,
l'dor vador, nagid God lecha. ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש. ושפחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. לדור ודור,
l'dor vador,
לדור ודור,
l'dor vador,
לדור ודור נגיד God לך. לדור ודור,
l'dor vador,
לדור ודור,
l'dor vador,
לדור ודור נגיד God לך. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. And do you want to read, Stephen, do you want to read the foot of 142 while you're unmuted?
Okay. You inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we do not live by bread alone, but also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. We thank you for the Sabbath day and for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy and for its peace. May our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness and consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good.
ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. המקדשי שביעי, המקדשי שביעי, כולם ישמחו ויתענגו מטובך. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו, והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו. חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך ותן חלקנו בתורתך. סבנו מטובך ושמחנו בשועתך. תהא ליבנו לעובדך באמת. ובחנכילנו אדוני אלוהינו באחווה וברצון שבת קודשך. וינוחו בה ישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ותפילתם באחווה תקבל. ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני שאותך לבדך ביראה נעבוד. We give thanks to you, eternal one, our God, as you are the God of our ancestors. You are the rock of our life, the power that shields us in every age. We thank and praise you for our lives, which are in your hand, for our souls, which are in your keeping, for the signs of your presence we encounter every day, and for your wondrous gifts at all times, morning, noon, and night. We praise you, O God, source of goodness, to whom our thanks are due. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. Chen v'chesed, chen v'chesed v'rachamim. V'rachamim. Sim shalom, עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עמך שים שלום. טובה וברכה. שים שלום טובה וברכה. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום. And let's take a few moments of silence, either with the text that's in front of you or whatever is in your heart, and we'll come together in a minute on 146. עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו amen. We're going to continue with the theme, on the theme of reconciliation. It's a lovely one. I'm going to ask at least a couple of people to read it. We could have more. Don't mind. It's on page 202. 202. Perhaps we can have a few readers. Aoife, are you up for reading? I think that was
I can. I'm just on the online version of the Siddur, so it's going to take me a little minute to scroll.
Okay. So maybe in a minute. Okay, so some people start us off with the reconciliation reading. It's nice. We'll do it responsively. Yeah, who'll go first? Linda will go first. And Linda and Maria will start, and then maybe we'll swap for two more people halfway through or so.
Okay.
Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. Then he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt."
And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves that you sold me here, for God sent me ahead of you to preserve life.
And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them, and only then were they able to speak to him.
And now forgive, we beg you, the transgressions of the servants of the God of your father.
Every day wrongs are done, between husband and wife, parent and child, brother and sister, between races, creeds, and nations. Harsh words are spoken, uncharitable judgments made, grievances nursed. Every day, in the absence of forgiveness, bitterness grows deeper.
Help us, O God, to break out of this vicious circle, which can only lead to misery, the misery of those with whom we are in conflict and our own. Make us see that right is rarely only on one side, even though it may be our own. Teach us to be self-critical, to restrain our anger, to swallow our pride, to moderate our demands, to make concessions, to be generous both to forgive and to accept forgiveness.
When two people had quarreled, Aaron would go and sit with one of them and say, "My child, do you realize what your neighbor is doing? He is tormenting himself and tearing his clothes and saying, 'I am so ashamed that I offended him.' And Aaron would sit with him until he had drained all anger out of his heart. Then Aaron would go and do the same to the other man. Later, when the two met, they would embrace and kiss each other."
Hillel said, "Be of the disciples of Aaron, loving peace and pursuing peace, loving your fellow men and women and drawing them near to the Torah."
We'll swap over here. I love all this material about Aaron the peacemaker. I think it's not in the Torah at all. I think it's a very rabbinic construct. It's kind of like making Aaron in the model of Hillel, of this kind of very gentle, humble person. Should we have a swap now? So Aoife, will you read? Yeah. So if you read from the 4 transgressions, and then another person to read responsibly with her. Alison, great. So for transgressions, Aoife start, and then Alison will continue. It's bottom of 203.
For transgressions between ourselves and God, the Day of Atonement atones. But for transgressions between one human being and another, the Day of Atonement does not atone unless they have reconciled one another.
Where are we?
204.
204. I'm sorry.
Forgive your fellow human. On top of 204, 4 lines down.
And now my children.
No, the one before that. Forgive your fellow human.
Forgive your fellow human beings the wrong they have done. Then you may pray and your sins will be pardoned.
And now, my children, I beg you, love one another. Drive hatred out of your hearts. Love one another in deed, word, and thought.
Love one another from the heart. If anyone sins against you, speak to them words of peace.
If others speak ill of you, do not respond in kind. Let even grave offense seem slight to you.
But if you have spoken ill of others, let even the slight offense seem grave to you until you have gone to them and apologized.
There are 4 types of person: easily provoked, easily appeased. Their strength is cancelled by their weakness. Hard to provoke, hard to appease. Their weakness is cancelled by their strength. Hard to provoke, easy to appease. The way of the saintly. Easily provoked, hard to appease. The way of the wicked.
Who is the greatest hero? One who turns an enemy into a friend.
Shall I go on? May we be among those who are hard to provoke and easy to appease. May we be an influence for peace in the world, and so bring nearer the time of the ultimate reconciliation.
Unmute, Joseph.
Havenu shalom alechem. Havenu shalom alechem. Havenu shalom alechem. Havenu shalom, shalom, shalom alechem. Havenu shalom alechem. Havenu shalom alechem. Havenu shalom alechem. Avinu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem. Thank you to everyone that read that. Maria, Linda, Aoife and Alison. That was brilliant. It's a really, really lovely theme, I think. So I thought it was worth doing. Really, really nice. So we'll continue with our Torah service, found in the usual place on page 481. That's 481. En kamocha ve'Elohim Adonai, ve'en kamahasecha, malchutecha malchut kol ha'olamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimlok le'olam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yavarech et amo v'shalom. We're back to pretending the scroll. I'm afraid we don't have it. I say don't have it. It's a Rachel's. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo, Gadlul Adonai iti, Unramama Shemo Yagdav. L'cha Adonai hagdula, v'hagavura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetza, v'hahod, v'hanetza, v'chachod. Ki kol b'shamayim u'va'aretz. L'cha Adonai ha'mamlacha v'hamidnaseh, So, today we are reading Parashat Vayehi, and this is the last portion of the book of Genesis, the book of Bereshit, Sefer Bereshit. Don't worry, this time last year, which we're still on Zoom, we were on Zoom last year, I did a quiz. I won't do it again, don't worry. No pressure. But this year I'm actually going to focus on Parsha itself, because it's really interesting and rich, and not one that I've spent much time on it in the past. Maybe others have. So I'm going to be reading from the end of the parasha, and before I do that, I'll just talk a little bit about what happens up to that point. So just so you're sort of fully set. So it's all about it. It begins, the Vayehi, the name, and he lived, is about Jacob living 17 years in Egypt. And then he's approaching the time of his death, and he asks, "Do not bury me in Egypt. Take me up to my burial place." And then he dies. No, he doesn't die yet. Sorry. He's dying, and Joseph comes to him, and he tells him that there won't just be a tribe of Joseph. There'll be tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh. It's quite unusual. There is no tribe of Joseph. All the other sons have a tribe, and just Ephraim and Manasseh. And Joseph brings them for a blessing, and he sets them up as he expects, from oldest and youngest. To Jacob's right hand will bless the oldest, but Jacob reverses the blessing with his hands. And as so often in Torah, there's this polemic in favour of the younger against the older. And I presume that it's about the Israelites wanting to see themselves as the younger civilization in comparison to Egypt and Assyria. And I think it must be something mythological, but it's throughout the book of Genesis that the order is reversed. And so he gives the blessing to Ephraim, the main blessing to Ephraim, even though he's the younger. And then Jacob calls all his sons to his bedside, and he gives this sort of long poem blessing that gives them all, talks about the character of all of them. And it seems to be that he's talking about what's really going on is the writers or the editors are talking about the period of the tribal rule in Israel, in Canaan, and which tribes were stronger and which were weaker, and reflects that back onto the characters in the book of Genesis. I think that's what's going on here, really. But it's important to know that Jacob doesn't ever really know what's been done, doesn't know the lie that was told about Joseph. He never seems to find that out. That doesn't figure into his calculations. And then he said, I'm about to die, please bury me in Hebron, where Abraham bought the cave, and Abraham and Isaac and Sarah and Rebecca, and I Jacob, buried Leah there. And so he dies, and it says Joseph flung himself on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And that happens a lot. A lot of weeping, a lot of kissing seems to be at the end of the Joseph story. And Joseph requests special permission for Pharaoh to go up to Canaan. And Pharaoh says, yes, go up and bury your father as he made you promise on oath. So that takes us up to where we're going to be reading from. So I'm going to be reading from Genesis 50, chapter 7 onwards, basically, until the end of the parasha. So it's Genesis 50, chapter 7. Or Stephen will put it up on the screen. I don't have any Chumash page numbers, but it's Genesis 50, chapter 50, verse 7. Now, before we put that up, can I have a volunteer to... oh, no, so we have this arranged, don't we? Is it Rosemary that you're going to do the blessings and the translation? Fantastic. Okay, so when you're ready, Stephen, if you want to put that up on the screen for us. Great. So 50 verse 7, that is the one. Yep. Okay, so I'll probably... let me just think about this. I think I'll read it all in Hebrew first, and then I'll get you to read the translation. So if you just the blessings to start with, please, Rosemary.
Yes.
I need to call your Hebrew name. What is it?
I think it's Miriam, I think.
Okay, let's go with that. Ta'amod Miriam l'kriyat haTorah.
Baruch et Adonai Hamavora. Baruch Adonai Adonai
Le'olam va'ed.
Hamavora Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bahar Banu Makol HaOmim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. V'ya'al Yosef likbo et aviv, v'ya'alu ito kol avdei paro, ziknei beito, kol ziknei eretz Mitzrayim, v'kol beit Yosef ve'achav u'veit aviv, rak tapam v'sornam, uvkaram azvu be'eretz Goshen, v'ya'al imo gam rechev gam parashim, v'hi hamachanei kaved me'od, v'ya'avu ad goren ha'atad, asher be'evet hayaden, ויספדו שם מספד גדול, וכבד מאוד, ויעש לעבב אבל 7 ימים. והיה יושב הארץ הכנעני את האבל בגורן האטד, ויאמרו, אבל כבד זה למצרים, על כן ככה שמע אבל מצרים אשר בעבר הירדן. ויעשו בניו לו כן כאשר ציווהם. וישאו אותו בניו עד שא כנען, ויקברו אותו במירת שדה המכפלה, אשר קנה אברהם את השדה לאחוזת קבר מאת עפרון החיתי על פני ממרא. וישב יוסף מצרימה, הוא ואחיו וכל העולים איתו לקבור את אביו אחרי קברו את אביו. ויראו אחי יוסף כי מת אביהם, ויאמרו לו, ישתמנו יוסף, והשב ישיב לנו את כל הרעה אשר גמלנו אותו. ויעצבו אל יוסף לאמור, אביך ציווה לפני מותו לאמור, כה תאמרו ליוסף, אנא שנה פשע אחיך וחטאתם, כי רעה גמלוך, ואתה שא נא לפשע עבדי אלוהי אביך, ויבך יוסף בדברם אליו. וילכו גם אחיו ויפלו לפניו, ויאמרו, הננו לך לעבדים. ויאמר עליהם יוסף, אל תיראו, כי חתיכת אלוהים אני. ואתם חשבתם עלי רע, אלוהים חשבה לטובה, למען עשו כיום הזה חיות עם רב. ועתה אל תיראו, אנוכי אכלכל אתכם ואת טבכם, וינחם אותם וידבר על ליבם. וישב יוסף במצרים הוא ובית אביו, ויהי יוסף 110 שנים. והיה יוסף לאפרים בני שלישם, גם בני מכיר בן מנשה יולדו על בכי יוסף. ויאמרו יוסף אל אחיו, אנוכי מת, ואלוהים פקוד יפקוד אתכם, והעלה אתכם מן הארץ הזאת, אל הארץ, אשר נשבע לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב. וישבע יוסף את בני ישראל לאמור, פקוד יפקוד אלוהים אתכם, והעליתם את עצמותי מזה. וימת יוסף בן 110 שנים, ויחנתו אותו, ויישם בארון במצרים. חזק חזק ונתחזק. May we be strengthened and strengthen each other. And now I'll go to Stephen's going to take it all the way back, and Rosemary's going to read the translation. So it concludes the death of Jacob, then we find out about the death of Joseph.
So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the officials of Pharaoh, the senior members of his court, and all of Egypt's dignitaries, together with all of Joseph's household, his brothers and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the region of Goshen. Chariots too and horsemen went up with him. It was a very large troop. When they came to Goram Ha-Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they held there a very great and solemn lamentation, and he observed a mourning period of 7 days for his father. And when the Canaanite inhabitants of the land saw the mourning at Goram Ha-Atad, they said, "This is a solemn mourning on the part of the Egyptians." That is why it was named Abel Mitzrayim, which is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had instructed them. His sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, the field near Mamre, which Abraham had bought for a burial site from Ephron the Hittite. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers, and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrong that we did him?" So they sent this message to Joseph: "Before his death, your father left this instruction. So shall you say to Joseph, 'Forgive, I urge you, the offense and guilt of your brothers who treated you so harshly. Therefore, please forgive the offense of the servants of the God of your father.'" And Joseph was in tears as they spoke to him. His brothers went to him themselves, flung themselves before him, and said, "We are prepared to be your slaves." But Joseph said to them, "Have no fear. Am I a substitute for God? Besides, although you intended me harm, God intended it for good, so as to bring about the present result, the survival of many people. And so fear not, I will sustain you and your children." Thus he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. So Joseph and his father's household remained in Egypt. Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph lived to see children of the third generation of Ephraim. The children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were likewise born upon Joseph's knees. At length Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die. God will surely take notice of you and bring you up from this land to the land that he promised on oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, when God has taken notice of you, you shall carry out my bones from here. Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet v'hayei olam, nata bato heinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Shakaya, thank you very much, Rosemary. Well read. I find that passage quite touching, not just because it's my namesake, but it feels quite beautiful. And it's interesting to me that we gloss over it because it's quite short, and we're in the book of Exodus begins the new narrative, but that Joseph lives to see his great grandchildren born in Egypt. So that's actually quite a large period, which we forget about, where they're living quite happily at the top of Egyptian society, really. Basically, it says that the whole of Egypt pretty much goes, the whole Egyptian officialdom goes to this burial of Jacob. It's kind of extraordinary stuff. Okay, we're going to continue with our Haftarah now, which is going to be, is it Maria? Yes, is that right? No, I've made that up.
No, it's me.
Sorry, apologies. Janet, I'm sorry, Janet.
Don't worry. Right, this morning's Haftarah is from the first book of Kings, chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. And I'm going to read from the JPS Tanakh, and if you've got one, it's on page 518. And I'm reading this in memory of my mother, whose Yortzeit falls this week. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'cha b'nviim tovim, v'rotzav v'divreihem hane'emorim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, haboker b'torah, u'v'moshe avdo, u'v'yisrael amo. When David's life was drawing to a close, he instructed his son Solomon as follows: I am going the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and following his laws, his commandments, his rules, and his admonitions, as recorded in the teaching of Moses, in order that you may succeed in whatever you undertake and wherever you turn. Then the Lord will fulfill the promise that he made concerning me. If your descendants are scrupulous in their conduct and walk before me faithfully with all their heart and soul, your line on the throne of Israel shall never end. Further, you know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me, what he did to the 2 commandments of Israel's forces, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He killed them, shedding blood of war in peacetime, staining the girdle of his loins and the sandals on his feet with blood of war. So act in accordance with your wisdom and see that his white hair does not go down to Sheol in peace. But deal graciously with the sons of Barzillai the Gileadite, for they befriended me when I fled from your brother Absalom. Let them be among those that eat at your table. You must also deal with Shimei, son of Gera the Benjaminite, from Bahurim. He insulted me outrageously when I was on my way to Mahanaim, but he came down to meet me at the Jordan, and I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to the sword. So do not let him go unpunished, for you are a wise man, and you will know how to deal with him and send his grey hair down to Sheol in blood. So David slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David. The length of David's reign over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron, and he reigned 33 years in Jerusalem. And Solomon sat upon the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, sur kol ha'alamim, sadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'emon, ha'omer v'yoseh, ha'medaber u'makayam, shekel devarod emet matzedek, al ha'torah v'al ha'avado, v'al ha'viyim, v'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, shenotata lonu Adonai Eloheinu, L'chdusha v'limnucha, v'chovod u'letfa'aret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu, anachnu modim lach, u'mevarachim otoch, yitparah shimcha, b'fi kol hai tamid le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you very much, Ishkaya. Wish you long life. We're going to continue with our stately and community blessings on page 484. So can people jump in to read those, please? I haven't assigned them, but...
Is it terrible buzzing? I've still got the buzzing.
From me?
Yes.
Yeah, it is you.
You've had that all the time, presumably, then?
Mm.
I don't think I'll be able to solve it then.
Not
So
too
it's
bad.
only
We can live
been
with it.
since
We can live with
That's it.
Is that better?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just a cable then. Okay. Can we have volunteers to step to read the following, Maureen? Do you want to just go first, and we'll just
Okay.
like that.
Eternal God, whose dominion embraces the universe, we ask your blessing for our Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, for those who govern our country and all who influence the quality of its national life. Make them conscious of their responsibility and teach them to exercise it in accordance with your will. May we all help to fashion in this country a society that excels in freedom and justice, tolerance and compassion, so that it may be a force for righteousness and peace in the life of humanity. Amen.
Thank you. And another person? Yep. If you read this one and then just pause at the end of 484, and I'll just ask for names for healing.
Eternal God, as you blessed our ancestors in generations past, bless now this congregation, its leaders and its members, and all who enter this virtual synagogue to meet, to study and to pray. Comfort the sorrowing hearts among us and heal those in anxiety or pain.
And can we ask for names of people that might be in need of healing right now that you'd like to mention?
my cousin
my
Nikki.
nephew. Sorry. My nephew Simon Lubert, who has just undergone chemotherapy, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that he won't need any more of it, and we wish him well.
Absolutely.
My very good friend Sue Rose, who's very ill.
Our centenarian, Cynthia Green, who's in
Ah.
hospital at the moment with suspected COVID.
I should like to mention our Rabbi Rachel, who is having a very well-deserved break until the end of the month. She's been working extremely hard, and I hope she really succeeds in resting.
Okay, so everybody, thank you very much. We wish for healing for all those people and for everyone else.
Joseph?
Yes?
Sorry, my friend Soba, my friend Amy, and my friend's father Daniel, and Rabbi Yechia ben Shetrit.
Thank you. Thank you. Misha Beira Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel v'Leah, Hu Yevarek v'Yirapeh et hacholim. Ana Rafana, El Narafana la. Ana Rafana, El Narafana la. Okay. And Aoife, can you continue on 485?
Sorry, just before you do, Aoife, just also obviously want to wish you well as well, Joseph.
Yeah.
Through your,
Thank you.
You're doing a fantastic job combining COVID and service taking. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And wish you well.
Absolutely. May we all find here community and friendship, renewal of purpose and hope, a deeper understanding of our heritage, and a sense of your abiding presence. May all congregations of the House of Israel throughout the world, bless all the congregations of the House of Israel throughout the world, that those who live under oppressive rule soon be freed, and may we all unite to witness to your truth and do your will.
Thank you. And one more person for the Israel prayer. Alison? Yeah, Alison's fine.
George put his hand up as well.
Well, I think you're first. I can.
No, I'll do it. I just don't want to.
I think you'll forgive you, maybe in a year or two.
Okay. Eternal God, our Redeemer, grant blessing to the state of Israel, created to fulfill an age-old dream and to be a haven for the oppressed. Inspire its leaders and citizens with the faithfulness of his founders to develop the land for the benefit of all in its inhabitants, and to implement the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice. May they live in harmony with one another and in peace with their neighbours, and cause to come true once more the ancient vision that out of Zion shall go forth Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem.
Thank you very much. On the foot of 486. Yahallelu et Shem Adonai, ki nizgav shemo levado. Hodo al eretz v'shamayim, v'yarem kerem le'amo, te'ila l'chol hasidav, livnei Yisrael am karabo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And the foot and page 489. Behold, good doctrine has been given to you. Do not forsake it. It is a tree of life to those who hold it fast, and all who cling to it find happiness. Ki lecha tov natarti lachem, Torati al ta'azovu. Eitz chayim hi, l'machazikim ba, v'tomechecha me'usha. D'rachecha dahenom, v'chol netivotecha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai Shameinu Kekedem Chodesh Shameinu Kekedem I've got a background buzz from the builders and the drills going on outside, so that's not any microphone issue. I'm just letting you know that I've got that going on. Where do you want to be buried? It's a morbid question, perhaps even an impolite one. If you're a synagogue member, the choice is likely to be limited to one of a few options: Edgebury Lane, Cheshunt, Hoop Lane. Perhaps some of you have relatives buried in some of the other Jewish cemeteries in London, such as Waltham Abbey or Willesden. Perhaps you or part of your family are not formally Jewish, in which case there are a great array of options open to you, from a family churchyard to a large municipal cemetery. In a way, it's a strange question to concern yourself with. As my father put it to me, he's not too bothered, he's not going to be there. Well, it's more an issue for those of us left behind and who might like a bit of future guidance. Thanks, my dad. But I think that there are issues beyond practicality. Your choices to where you want to be buried are bound up with your self-identity, how you want to be remembered. We are all in some way or another involved in curating our legacy, seeking a place in history, however big or small. In our parashah, we have 2 deaths and 2 burials. Jacob has reached the end of a long and eventful life and makes his sons promise to take his body back to the family tomb, the cave that Abraham bought in Hebron, Merat HaMachpelah, the cave of the patriarchs. Tradition has it that 4 couples are buried there: Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Leah, and soon Jacob alongside her. The cave is said in the Midrash to be the gateway to the Garden of Eden, explaining why Adam and Eve are included in the list. Fulfilling Jacob's pledge turns out to be a major undertaking. Joseph, high-ranking Egyptian official that he is, has to get explicit permission from Pharaoh to make the visit to Canaan, and takes a huge Egyptian state delegation with him. Now, I tend to see the editorial hand of the Torah in the text here. The writers and the editors have a tradition that Jacob is buried at Machpelah, so they have to get his body out of Egypt in the story for that to work. And there seems to be a desire to emphasize the preeminence of Canaan, or the land of Israel, perhaps because that's where the writers of most of Genesis were living at the time. But it also makes sense for Jacob. He's only been in Egypt a short part of his life, 17 years, the text says, to avoid the famine. So it makes sense that his body should return to Canaan for burial. Joseph, however, does have his father embalmed, a clear Egyptian rather than Israelite custom. But when Joseph dies, a chapter later, burial in Canaan makes less sense. Joseph has become deeply Egyptian, married an Egyptian woman, Asenat. Although exegetes tried to find a way to dispute that she wasn't Jewish, and there's a whole interesting kind of body of literature on that. And he's risen to the top of Egyptian high society. In modern language, Joseph is highly assimilated. The Torah says that he lived to see his great-grandchildren, the grandchildren of Ephraim and Manasseh, born in Egypt. So the period of the Israelites in Egypt is no brief excursion. It's multi-generational, and it's thus unsurprising that Joseph is embalmed too, and this time buried in Egypt. But there's a twist. Joseph says that should the Israelites leave Egypt, and I think the writers here know what's going to happen, the Israelites should dig up the bones and take them with, which is exactly what the book of Exodus says happens a few chapters later. It does seem a little strange. The Israelites didn't have time to let bread rise, but they had time to exhume a body. But, you know, there you go. The editors have got to tie up these loose ends by hook or by crook. Now, a number of sites have been claimed as the burial place of Joseph's bones, but the most prominent one is near Nablus and is especially holy to the Samaritans. There's a long tradition in Judaism of visiting the graves of leaders and rabbis, even when it involves travelling long distances. The cave of Machpelah was visited and prayed at by no less than Maimonides. And there's also the famous, I think it's 12th century traveller Benjamin of Tudela that also went there and prayed and wrote about it. And he said that he had to basically say that he was a Jew and he was allowed to go to the special part at the bottom, which wasn't accessible to Muslims and Christians. Quite interesting. After his death, Hasidim began travelling to the grave of the Baal Shem Tov in Mezbij. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Mezbij, I think, in modern-day Ukraine. And it still is a place of pilgrimage. And visiting there became known as Aliyah L'Regel, going up by foot, which is interesting because it's a term otherwise reserved for going to the temple or going to the land of Israel. Uman, also in Ukraine, is the burial place of Rebbe Nachman of Breslav, and every year thousands of mostly Orthodox Jews visit for Rosh Hashanah to pray and, let's face it, to party, and I've definitely got an ambition to go and join that one year. It'd be great. Attempts to exhume his body, the body of Rebbe Nachman, and bring it to Israel have thus been unsuccessful, so Ukraine remains firmly on the Jewish pilgrimage map. And the tradition is alive and well in the Sephardi and Mizrahi world too. The tomb of the Moroccan rabbi Yaakov Abu Hatzera near Alexandria in Egypt is a popular site of pilgrimage every 19th of Tevet, so that's next week. The tomb of Amram ben Divan in Ouazan, northern Morocco, is visited on Lag BaOmer. And also at Lag BaOmer, Jewish pilgrims travel to the El Griba synagogue on the island of Jerba, which is named after a young Jewish girl who is supposed to have died at that spot and is now venerated as a saint. And there are many, many more Sephardic graves, Mizrahi graves of places of pilgrimage in North Africa, the Middle East. As Zelda's famous poem concludes, each of us has a name given to us by the sea and by our deaths. I love to walk through cemeteries and glean the tiny amounts of information you can get from a gravestone, the dates, perhaps their Hebrew names, something about their families, and just imagining what life might have lain behind those. When choosing an epithet for the memorial bench for my late mother, Marilyn, I didn't really want to put kind of information about the family left behind. I just chose to write actor, writer, feminist, and lover of dogs, concluding with a 2-word quote from Ian Forster's Howard's End, "Only connect." I think that's the kind of legacy she would have wanted. Of course, we all choose our place of burial for reasons of convenience to those we leave behind, for them to visit us when we've gone. Perhaps they will follow some of the folk traditions of Judaism, of going to the grave to invite the deceased to family simchas, like weddings, bar mitzvahs, or a tradition which a friend of mine, Annie Cohen, has been researching, of measuring string round cemeteries and then using that string to make wicks for Yortzeit candles. This was a long-standing tradition practiced by women, predominantly in Eastern Europe. And perhaps the precise place of your burial isn't important to you as it was to Jacob and Joseph in the Torah. Maybe you're more interested in curating your memory through your life. As we're in the season where the greatest of all Christmas films, It's a Wonderful Life, will invariably be shown. And I discovered this week that the source material, the writer of the source material was half Jewish, so I thought that was nice. And his father was Jewish. It's always worth reflecting on its central question: what would the world be like if you had never been born? And if granted that knowledge, what would you do? In a world of ephemera, only a few things endure. And one of the greatest of them is what the Talmud calls the Keter Shem Tov, the crown of a good name. Through good deeds and kindness, we can achieve a good name in our lifetimes, which will endure in the memories of others, whatever our final resting place. Shabbat Shalom. I'm now going to conclude the service with the Amidah, which you can find on page 520. 520. Aleinu l'shabech la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, אשר שם חלקנו לאחד את שמו, וגורלנו לחמליק מלכותו. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומשב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, ידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. And the foot of the next page, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Life is finite. Like a candle, it burns, it glows, is radiant with warmth and beauty. Then it fades, its substance is consumed, and it is no more. Yet we do not despair, for we know that we are more than a flickering flame. With our lives we give life. Something of us can never die. We move an eternal cycle of darkness, of light, of death and life. And as in our hearts we name our loved ones, we pray that the divine presence will comfort us and all who mourn. And we're especially thinking of those that have yahrzeits at this time. Rebecca Gilbert, mother of Shirley Heffetz. Richard Gruen, father of Jackie Gruen and father of Zoe Gruen. Maurice Joel, husband of Anne Joel. Paul Kahn, stepfather of Gideon Fiegel. Stella Matlin, mother of Janet Solomon, mother of John Matlin. Maureen Miller, wife of Alvin Miller. Elizabeth Palmer, sister of Rosemary Wilson. Lippmann Sontag, father of Richard Sontag. And wish all of you long life. Is there anyone else who's died recently, or anyone would like to mention?
Aubrey Scott, who was buried this week.
I'm sorry.
Our member.
Okay, and we'll turn to say the Kaddish on page 524. If you want to unmute to say the Kaddish, you're welcome to do so, but there's no obligation. It's your choice. 524. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעולמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, ובהיה דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב, אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה, ברק לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברא וישתבח, יפעל ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, ימי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, ושבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שמע רבה מן שמיים, החיים עלינו ואמרו אמן. עשה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם, אמרו amen. Okay, over to you, Stephen.
Okay, first, I just wanted, Joseph, on behalf of all of us, just to thank you very much for leading the service today, and for your very interesting sermon. Give us food for thought about where we wish to be, may or may not wish to be buried or cremated or whatever is the custom, and the various traditions and histories there. And it is always, it strikes me as a very interesting time. What strikes me is this dramatic transition from the deaths of Joseph and Jacob this week to that dramatic transition to the start of Exodus next week, which we'll hear next Shabbat, when a Pharaoh arises, of course, who does not know Joseph, and that dramatic transition is always, to me, one of the most striking moments in the calendar of Sidrot that we read. So thank you very much, Joseph, and again, just wishing you, on behalf of all of us, a speedy recovery from the dreaded COVID. Next week, the service will be led on Friday night by Gwendolyn Burton. So please join her for that. That's on the 24th of December. And then on, dare I say it, Christmas Day.
No, 25th, just the 25th will do.
Nissel is cool.
That's right. I think Rachel, although she is off, I think she will be leading that service, unless Adrian knows different. But that's what I've been told by Kevin, is that
yeah, that's the plan, that she's leading the service.
Right. So please join Rachel on Saturday, the 25th of December at 11.
On Zoom.
On Zoom, yes, and hear the start of Exodus. I'll just try and share my screen in terms of events. See if this works. There we are. Just first of all, Janet has mentioned that there is no Tien Torah, although it is mentioned in the list of events on the website, because they've now stopped for the festive period and will recommence in the new year. So just in case anybody tries to join, don't try, because they're not doing it. On the other hand, there is tomorrow, on Sunday at 4 o'clock, a talk by a lady called Jenny Nemko from a group called Talk Matters, which began just over a year ago to raise awareness of cooperative Palestinian-Israeli initiatives, and to serve as a kind of umbrella group for people with similar organizations. So that should be a very interesting talk, and hopefully more perhaps positive than some of the things we often hear about Israel. And then on Tuesday, the 21st, Alex Gerlis will be joining us to talk about his 9th novel called Agent in Berlin. He's written previous novels like Spy Master and the Prince series. So that should be very interesting to listen to hear about his book, and then possibly, if you're interested, then potentially buying it, because it sounds a very interesting novel. So join him on Tuesday at 2:30, all on Zoom. All these things are on Zoom. That's all I've got to say. I don't know if anybody else has any announcements they wish to make. If not, I shall hand back to Joseph.
Thanks, Stephen. We'll conclude with Ein Kelohenu on page 528. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kalonenu, Ein Kamalkenu, Ein Kamoshienu, Mikalohenu, Mikadonenu, Mikamalkenu, Mikamoshienu. Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Magenu, Atahu Moshiachenu. Adonai Yishmor Teitenu Avo'enu, Me'ata ve'ad olam. May the Eternal One guard our going out and our coming in, now and always. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you for coming and bearing with me. Definitely, my voice is not really there, but it's I didn't want to cancel because there wasn't another service leader lined up. Can someone lead Kiddush for us? Yeah, Linda, maybe, as you're holding your glass of either wine or could be herbal tea.
It's
Joseph first.
Go for it, Linda.
We have to go, I'm afraid.
Okay, thanks, George.
Shalom, George and Mary.
L'sham Ruvenei Israel et HaShabbat Lasot et HaShabbat Gadorot HaCharit Olam Bnei Israel Ot Olam Asa Adonai et HaShamayim et Haaretz Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Amen.
Right.
Pala? Yeah, Paul and Pat, do the halal for unmute.
Adonai, Enu melech haolam, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Amen.
Can I just say something about tomorrow's talk? Because it is quite, I feel very strongly about it. Jenny has set up this forum for disparate groups to advertise where they are joining together to across the ethnic divides, across the cultural divides in Israel and outside. And I do think that because Israel gets such negative press, that this initiative should be really widely advertised. So anybody who can join in, please do so. And please, if you can't watch it tomorrow, I'm sure it will be recorded. So hang on to it and please advertise the initiative as widely as you can, because I do think Israel does need some positive news coming out of it. And this may well help, you know, just as in Northern Ireland, where the women's movement, the grassroots movement made a colossal difference to the politics in Northern Ireland. Hopefully many of these small initiatives will eventually help Israel to project a better image. So thank you very much for listening. Okay, fine. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Can I just also recommend Tuesdays? Alex Gerlis is a wonderful writer. I've got 3 of his books,
Yeah,
and he's well worth listening to. He's a good interviewee. So, yeah. So, and thank you, Joseph. And I do wish you better.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Shalom. Get better.
Thank you, Joseph. Wishing
Thank
you
you,
better.
Thank you, Joseph. All the
Thank you,
best.
Joseph. Sorry.
Thank you, Joseph. That was a really wonderful service, and I do wish you all of your complete recovery from the dreaded COVID. But it was a fascinating sermon, most interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shabbat shalom, everyone, and thank you, Joseph.
Shabbat shalom.
Very lovely.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shalom. Thank you, Joseph.
think we're done, everyone. So I'm going to end the meeting now. Shabbat shalom to all.
Shabbat shalom, Stephen.
See you, Maureen. I'm going to end the meeting. Shabbat shalom.